he's doing his entrance tour. Go back and once again, I'm Jeremiah. Thank you all for being here. And we're ready to get this thing started. As I mentioned, I've had the pleasure of working with this guy for about 3 years now, and he's always been committed to the work and always been what we call a hard truth teller. Being able to work with him has been an absolute pleasure in my life. I'm so glad that you all will be able to hear from him today. Be able to continue this work and do it in a meaningful way. I'm so glad to be here with my man. Tom Steyer, and I'm going to let him do the talking now, and I'm pretty sure most of you all, as I mentioned before, the impeachment folks, the people that supported impeachment, where are y'all? Without further ado, here we go.
So, let me ask you, Jeremiah, how much time do we have? I would
as long as you
love
want.
to talk, but I'd love to have some questions. I'd love to have a conversation with as many people here as we can have to answer whatever questions you have. So let me start by saying I'm sorry to be late. I really hate being late and keep people waiting. But let me say this too. I love being in California. And I love being in San Diego. And I got a chance today to go to a shelter here for families who are seeking asylum and who have been released from the detention center, and the people of San Diego are taking care of them while they figure out how to get to their families in the United States. And this is far from the first time that I've been in San Diego where I've seen the people here step up in a very real way to do the right thing. You know, I was here last year, about a year and a half ago, and I sat down with two 35-year-old women who are corporate lawyers and had young children. So if you're a mom who's a corporate lawyer who's 35 years old, that means you have 0 minutes of the day to waste. And each of them was volunteering for 20 hours a week to take care of trafficked women. And I said, how do you fit that in? And they said, Tom, some of these women, it's absolutely critical that people do this, and so we're giving up our time to do this. So what I've seen in San Diego and what I see in California is a spirit of actually getting things done with a big brain and a big heart and a huge amount of success. And that's why I love being here. I am completely inspired with the California attitude about optimism, can-doism, data-driven thinking, and a great human spirit that we are all worthy, that we're a majority-minority state, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this in California. We can't pull this malarkey that Mr. Trump pulls about dividing Americans. We're a majority-minority state. We get along or we perish. We all know that in California, and we've been making that work. Hello, Bill Wall. So I want to just say I want to tell you why I'm running. Look, I'm running simply because I was worried that we weren't going to have the conversation in this campaign that I thought was necessary, which is this. I believe, having spent 10 years thinking about it full time, that the reason we have a broken government in the United States, the reason that we don't deal with gun violence is the gun companies. The reason we don't deal with the exorbitant cost of healthcare is the drug companies, the insurance companies, and the monopoly hospitals. The reason we don't deal with climate change is because the oil and gas companies don't want to lose the money that they would lose if we actually protected the health and safety of every American. So, it is incredible. So I thought, I cannot sit by and watch a policy discussion about the Green New Deal, super important, about healthcare policy, how to improve the ACA or replace the ACA, super important, education policy, super important, none of which we're going to get until we break the corporate stranglehold. And I thought, we got to talk about how we're getting this, because once we break that corporate stranglehold, we're getting all of it. We're going to have a great discussion about exactly how to do it best. We're getting all of it, but not until we do that. And the second thing is, look, I said I'd declare a state of emergency on climate on day one. We're in a state of emergency. The president's job is commander-in-chief, protect the safety and health of every American.
Amen.
Here we go. This is emergency. Use the emergency powers of the president to make this happen. And the third thing is this. You know Trump is running on the economy. He's going to say, he basically said, yes, I'm a criminal. Yes, I hate you. Yes. I am a bigot. Sure, I'm a total bigot. I hate people, but the economy. You can't get rid of me because you need me for the economy. Look, I spent 30 years in the private sector building an international business from scratch. I spent so much time thinking about the economy. I'd love to expose him for what he is, which is a fake, a fraud, and a failure. His big economic policies, his big policies are a tax plan that's one of the biggest scams of all time. That was an absolute ripoff of the American people. His trade policy, his trade war, it's blowing up in his face. It's real, you know, people said farmers are starting to worry about the trade war. It's like, really? You know, you guys ever, there's a movie about Johnny Cash and Walk the Line, and he's interested in June Carter, and he gets her out on stage to sing a duet late at night at the end of this concert. And she says to him, "You have me out on stage, Mr. Cash. Is that where your plan ends?" And that's what I'd say to Donald Trump. You've started a war with the whole world. You're losing it. Is that where your plan ends? And the answer is, yeah, it kind of is. He has no idea how to get out of this. He's you know, people said, when I started Need to Impeach, I said, he could start a war.
Yep.
It turned out he started a war. It just wasn't a 20th century war or a 19th century war. It was a trade war.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what to do about it except to keep going deeper. So as far as I'm concerned, look, I love being here. I love Californians. I love the California attitude. I was talking to somebody in DC who's from LA, and they said, "Is it really nice in San Diego?" Kinda, yeah. Actually, I'll tell you one last thing. I was here. They had the California Democratic Party convention here like a year ago, and I was being interviewed by a young woman from Politico, who's from DC. I said, "Have you ever been to California before?" I said, "How long have you been here?" She goes, "Like 40 minutes. I just got off the plane." I said, "Have you been to California before?" She said, "I've been to LA one time. I'm thinking of moving here." I said, "After 40 minutes, you're going to move to San Diego." She's like, "I think so." Anyway, I've had some questions. You know, I really felt, I was watching the debates and I was scared to death that we weren't going to deal with the truth. Absolutely terrified that we were going to go through this and have important policy debates, but we weren't going to go. I don't believe you could change things in America. I don't think you should be able to change things in America unless you go to the American people and say, "This is what I think, this is what I'm going to do. If you vote for me, I'm going to take these guys down. And I want you behind me." And I felt like somebody's got to call this out. Clearly. So that you have a mandate to get it done. You can't show up the day after you get elected and say, "By the way, I didn't mention this during the campaign, but this is what I'm going to do." Can't do it. That's why. Excuse me? Look, okay, I believe, look, the question is, how are we going to get a broad-based sweep in 2020? So one thing is, I have guaranteed I would keep doing all the grassroots stuff we've done. The door-to-door, the youth organizing, every single thing we've been doing, we're going to keep doing. I believe the Republican Party is so intellectually and morally bankrupt that they're in a place, I don't think they understand what they've done. And I believe that we have to call out, look, I don't even like insulting Mitch McConnell. Moscow, Mitch, treason, who needs to say that? But look, we're in a place where they have really blown it across the board. You know, why don't we have background checks on every gun purchase? Because the Republicans won't do it. Yeah. You know, when we talk about climate, people say, you know, some of the Republicans now acknowledge climate change. I'm like, I don't care. You know, I don't really want to hear people say, we need to do another study of whether cigarettes cause cancer.
No.
It's like, we don't need to do another study. The time, you know, at this point, we really need to move.
Yes.
And we need to call them out. And we need a broad-based win. And if you look around the country, the people who are voting Republican are voting for people who are doing terrible things to them. Yeah. And it's funny, I was talking to a guy who's probably the biggest, the most famous African-American preacher in the United States last week. And he was in Kentucky talking to people in the backwoods about why they voted for Mitch McConnell. And he said, you know he's screwing you. And the people go, yeah, we know that. And they said, well, why do you vote for him, for goodness sake? And they go, well, he shows up. The Democrats never even bother to come. He shows up. And my attitude is, we gotta show up. We gotta go. We gotta be human enough to show up and say, and be honest with them about what we care about and let them see who we are. We cannot be scared. Yeah.
What's it going to take to get you to the stage?
I guess I'll find out tomorrow. Look, the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to get 130,000 individual donors, which I have, and you need 4 polls in the early primary states where you're above 2 that the DNC allows. I got 3 by 3 weeks ago, and they haven't had another poll in the early primary states since then.
Who are they polling? They're not polling us.
I know, so I can't, all I can say is there's supposed to be some more polls tomorrow. Look, one of the things that's different is, I think people sometimes run for president because they want to be president. I'm running for president because I want to do something as president. So I am not gonna stop because something goes against me. I mean, things are gonna go against us going forward. And if every time something goes against us, we go like, it's too tough, I'm quitting. Then how much did you really care in the first place? My attitude on this thing is like, I think there's something terribly wrong. I think it's not gonna be about me. If the American people don't get together and decide to do something about it, it doesn't even matter who's president.
What are your top 3 priorities on day 1?
Day 1, I would declare a state of emergency on climate. Day 1. Number 1 thing. I would go, as president, you can rejuvenate the Federal Election Commission and get extreme transparency. Look, I know in Northern California, the utilities spent $25 million on a proposition and lost to people who had like 150 grand. If people know where the money's coming from, if you find out the cigarette companies just spent $50 million on something, every time their ad comes up, you go like, bullshit. Look, there's no doubt that over the last 40 years, working Americans have not gotten a raise, period. That's never happened in American history before. If you were wondering whether corporations have bought the democracy, that proves it.
Yeah.
All of the money has gone to the bottom lines of corporations.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, that is, if we don't restore a living wage to working Americans, I mean, I say to everybody, why are we talking so consistently about everything in the economy is jobs? It's like we have 3.7% unemployment. The jobs we have, you can't live on. People have 2 jobs. You know, the gig economy, we're in California, home of the gig economy. They did a study. We're going to have, look, this isn't going to be a silver bullet. In terms of job, in terms of wage equality, a living wage, this has to be an absolute goal. But there's been 40 years of attacking working people.
Minimum is not living.
No, it isn't. But the other thing I think is this: there's been an attempt to take down unions across the board in this country for 40 years. And it's a twofer for Republicans. A, they get to keep the money, take away the negotiating power of working people, and B, the unions are the arms and legs of the Democratic Party. So if you take down unions, if you're a Republican, it's like Christmas in July. It's just great. We're going to have to restore the negotiating power and the rights of working people across the board. I think on number 3, we're going to have to go on day 1 and try and reestablish the workings of the federal government. It's boring, but I'll tell you something. One of the things that Trump has tried to do is basically suck out the people from the government. And I think we should all say, look, I'm assuming you guys are Democrats. If you look at what some of those conservative civil servants have done under this president, the people in the FBI, the people in the CIA, the people in the defense establishment, they have really been good. They have really stuck it to this president, and they've stuck to their guns. And I think a lot of them are Republicans, but they're patriots too. And I give so much credit across the board. The top 3 things that make me different from Trump. Okay, first of all, I actually created a business on my own and inherited $0. I will release my taxes and I'll and look, Donald Trump, I think the biggest, yes, that's the biggest difference. Look, this is a guy who has he does not care about people. How do you separate I'll tell you a story. So one of my good friends, I think, is this really fantastic person on environmental justice. And she's done, like, in California and around the country, all of the climate stuff she puts in a context of environmental justice and works with grassroots people, and she's just a fantastic person. And she's married to somebody. Who was a child psychologist, and they were watching the news about the separation of children from their families, and they had a soundtrack of the kids crying, and then her husband started to cry. And so Vienne said, what's the matter? And he said, I'm a child psychologist. I know the difference between a kid who cries because they're hungry, and a kid who cries because they're tired, and a kid who cries because they're tortured.
That's correct.
And if you ask me, Donald Trump doesn't know that difference.
No.
And he doesn't care.
Absolutely.
And that is something that is so different. He wouldn't get along for 2 seconds in San Diego. Where's Not 2 seconds. People here do not accept that kind of wanton cruelty and selfishness. Yes.
You're not going to get elected if the electoral votes in the swing states are stolen because the elections are corrupt. What are you doing to safeguard those elections in the swing states?
So the question was, what am I doing to safeguard the elections in the swing states? I know that there are people in the Democratic Party setting out right now, led by Stacey Abrams, by the way, to go and try and make sure of that very thing. We also know that in some of those swing states where Republicans are in charge of the voting machines, where they're in charge of the places, where they're in charge of who remains on the rolls, there's not just a willingness to allow those elections to be hacked, a refusal to include paper ballots the way we have it in California. It's like, you want to hack the election, you have to steal like trucks and trucks and trucks of ballots. It's not going to happen. But there's not only a willingness to let it be hacked because they believe it'll be hacked in their favor, there's also, we have to never forget, systematic, consistent, organized attempt to take away the franchise from African American citizens of the United States.
Yes.
And it's big. And they've done it for years. And there's no question that in some of those states, it was more than the difference by which Mr. Trump won. But it's consistent if you go to all the states where there's a Republican governor, Republican legislature, Republican state senate, that disenfranchising American citizens, specifically African Americans, was part of the plan. Yes.
How are you going to prevent hacking to your votes that are supposed to be coming in? Because right now, the Russians and the North Korean and all those guys are going to be hacking in favor of Trump. So what are you doing to protect
Well, I think
yourself?
there's going to be two forms of interference in this election. And obviously, one of the things Robert Mueller said was, not only was there definitely hacking of the 2016 election, but they've already started trying to hack the 2020 election.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also true that the Congress has not appropriated the money or the administration has not spent the money to protect us.
That's true.
So once again, I'd say, as Commander-in-Chief, 21st century war includes hacking the democracy and the election by hostile foreign powers,
Correct.
which happened in 16, which the Commander-in-Chief not only denies happened, but won't prevent it.
Correct.
So there are two kinds of hacking that I think we're going to get from these people. One is the use of Facebook under fake names to try and send messages to people that are misleading and dishonest.
Yeah.
And that's something which I think the companies are going to try and work on, but which we're going to have to call out and try and be aware of. The second is the hacking of the actual election itself. And I think that in the places where Republicans control the machines, it's going to be very hard. And so if you look, that one of the things that happened in 2018, we were all over the young people in the state. The governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, lost.
Yes.
And he was one of the worst. And in terms of disenfranchising African Americans, that state had 100,000 people struck off the rolls and prevented
Yeah.
from voting.
Yeah.
So as we retake the states, we deal with the hacking because they're inviting it. And so every time we don't retake the state, we have the possibility or the likelihood that they're going to invite in hackers because they believe those hackers will support Republicans, which is it's shocking that someone would sell us out like that. Yeah, they are. Yes.
Tom, what would you like us to do in San Diego to support you?
Yeah.
Look, this is going to be, we're going to get to a place where it's going to be participation. Obviously, I appreciated getting 130,000 individual donors, and at some point in the future, I may come back and ask for money. That's going to happen. But really the question here is going to be, ultimately, we're going to be asking people to participate in the democracy, to make sure that people turn out, to talk about why it's important. And I think in California, we have a history of, this is a town which has really come in an amazing way politically. And it used to be a very conservative Republican town, and now I think it is a very progressive town. And I give you guys all the credit in the world. And so I'm going to ask at some point for that kind of participation on a grassroots basis because, it's democracy. You've got to participate or it doesn't exist. Not a spectator sport. And so for the people here, we will not take the democracy by remote control. And I think everybody, people can participate in different ways. One of the things I'd say is, there was a lady when we were doing Need to Impeach, whose name was Mary Rose Allen from Iowa. She was 92 years old. She was homebound. She wrote 1,000 notes from home asking people to vote who were on the list. And I said, so that's enough to say thank you. And I said, what was your inspiration? And she said, look, I have grandkids. I was going to do what it took so I could say to my grandkids, I love you. I want to make sure this is okay for you. And we're all going to we're going to be in that situation come November 2020. There's absolutely no doubt about it. There's absolutely no doubt about it that we're going to be backs to the wall. Losing this election would be unthinkable. Honestly, unthinkable. And so we're going to be all backs to the wall. It won't happen unless people here and people like people here decide, no, we're taking back the democracy, come hell or high water.
The tax cut, okay, for the top one, she looks like whether that's the only ones that benefited. I'm assuming that you're up there. And could you explain what actually happens? How has it benefited you?
Well, so first of all, the question is, how does the tax cut benefit rich people and how come it doesn't benefit everybody else? Here's what I'd say is this. First of all, it was designed to cut corporate taxes specifically and also taxes on the top wage, income people. But it was specifically designed to screw California. Just so you know, because you aren't allowed to deduct state and local taxes anymore. So actually the goal was to make rich people outside California, New York, and New Jersey richer, and corporations richer, but to make sure that he got his little dagger out and stuck it in us. So all he was doing was he was lowering the corporate tax rate so they could hang on to more money, and he was lowering the top rate so people would pay less money. But it specifically worked for people like him. I mean, the crazy part of this was, it was as if he wrote a tax plan for himself, which he did. Like one of the things, I should go, but one of my favorite things of the last 2 days is the G7, they just had their The next meeting is in the US, and Trump has suggested that it be at his resort in Miami. Because it's the nicest resort, okay?
And he gets paid for
you guys that I'm doing this.
It's got bed bugs.
Is that amazing?
Cockroaches. Bed bugs.
That is definitely a crime. Just to be clear, that is an impeachable crime. So I'll do one last question, dinner.
Yeah, that's Aloria. That's right.
Can you take down pharma?
Pharma.
On Congress and the local politicians.
Look,
And they
pharma, if you look, we pay multiples for the same drugs as people in Canada. I was with a Canadian last night and she told me that something costs $150 here, costs $10 there. And it's illegal to go to Canada to buy drugs.
Yes.
So guess who wrote those bills? It is illegal for the US government to negotiate drug prices with drug companies. Illegal. Only country in the world. That's insane. Who do you think wrote that one? So, look, I will tell you something. I'm competitive. I really am. I don't like people who beat the heck out of the American people for 40 years and lie about it. I don't like it. And it's just, my attitude on this, if they think we're not negotiating, that is insane. We are going to have to go deep. One of the things I did probably 2 years ago, I went up to lobby in Sacramento for a bill that said if a drug company raises the price of its drug by more than 35%, they will tell the state of California 30 days in advance so we could change the formulary, like see if we could substitute another drug that was less expensive. You'd think that would be a no-brainer. Huge fight. Huge fight. The elected officials were like, oh, whoa, you're taking on farmers. Like, no, are you kidding me? That was a huge fight. We are going to have to call these people out. We're going to have to go after them. I am going to be really competitive. I don't like what they're doing, and I don't like them lying about what they're doing, and I don't like them taking advantage of the American people, and it's just got to stop. And we got to say it, and then we got to do it, and we can't be nice enough. I don't care about the profits one bit.
They have such a stranglehold in these vaccine mandates across the United States.
They are charging us. They do stuff. I'll tell you something else. There's this thing called pay to delay. You ever heard of this? So basically, this is the last thing I'll say, but you get it when you invent a new drug, you get 7 years, or you have a patent that it says you have a monopoly on that drug, and you basically can charge whatever you want.
And you do clinical trials.
And you do, but then at the end of 7 years, it runs out, and anybody can make the drug, and it goes from $150 to $10. There's a thing where it's called pay to delay. They go to the people who are planning to make the drug and compete on price, and pay them $400 million not to compete, and then they keep their price at $150. I know, and you're like, that's got to be illegal. And everyone's like, no, that's normal, Tom. Like, that's a fraud on the American taxpayer.
Yeah.
That's got to be a crime.
For private fundraising. Right. All the time. But yeah,
मैम ये मैम मजा
Sorry. I was like, I was hoping it wasn't live. The movie theaters are not the lot, but if there's so much.
it's definitely not the Trump fan club line, right? No.
तू आगे जा ते पिक्चर ले ले
Mar-a-Lago donors.
हाँ तो ले चले
If you take that to a silver sign, you can exchange it for Thanks for signing. Here's your drink with the
साइन कर
इसका ले लो पिक्चर.
ले ली
Let's figure that out. Let me get.
मुझे दे दे
कोई नहीं.
Okay, let me get confirmation on that. Finally.
Inside.
Okay, lead the way.
I'm not finished.
excuse me sir
Thank you.
No, you have to sign up here. Again, you have to sign again? Sorry. I was like, I was hoping it wasn't live. The movie theaters are not the lot, but if there's so much.
It's definitely not the Trump fan club line, right? No.
तू आगे जा ते पिक्चर ले ले
Mar-a-Lago donors.
हाँ तो ले चले
If you take that to a silver sign, you can exchange it for Thanks for signing. Here's your drink with the
साइन कर
इसका ले लो पिक्चर.
ले ली
Let's figure that out. Let me get.
मुझे दे दे
कोई नहीं.
Okay, let me get confirmation on that. Finally.
Inside. Okay, lead the way. Yeah. I'm not fish. Sure. Excuse me, sir. Thank you.
No, you have to sign up here. Again, you have to sign again? It's coming by helicopter. Helicopter shot.
I was thinking, if San's going to be speaking right here, I think right here, kind of directly, would be good for at least for us cameras.
And where do you want me to stand?
Want me to stand next to him?
Stand wherever you'd like, to be honest. Well, yeah, I mean, just kind of right.
Okay.
But I mean, right next to
अपने वॉलंटियर में डाला कुछ
yeah.
क्या
आपने लिखा वॉलंटियर करने का
तूने लिखा ना
नहीं मैंने तो आई कैन वॉलंटियर
नहीं मैंने कुछ
Have you? Oh. I can bring one. Anybody else like a drink? Sure. I'm sorry. Somebody in line. Somebody on block.
Yeah, I know. Right. Unbelievable that anybody could export this guy. 40% of people support this guy. And it's like, what are you looking at? That is amazing. I know.
Couldn't find a chair, they wouldn't let you have one.
Mike, since you're sitting down, why don't you take
Can I get one?
Huh?
Can I get one?
Yes, they have a whole bunch over there.
Okay, all right. Okay.
We're encountering at the border to fight all the abuses on women's rights and many, many other things that make everybody very angry. So thank you for turning that anger into action. Right? And well, my name is Ricardo. You guys have heard me already saying a whole lot of testing. I'm the baby of the campaign. I just started yesterday. And I keep well. And I'm the director for Spanish communications or Spanish content. And I'm really glad to be here. I'm originally from Mexicali. And I came to San Diego in 1996 when I joined the Navy. I did 20 years, 15 of which were here in San Diego. I love this place. I love this city. Best city in the world. Finest city in America. I don't say that, the cops say that. And I believe them because they are cops. So you have to, right? And but I'm really glad to be here. I'm very excited for today. And so hopefully we will have Tom here in a few more minutes. Thank you for putting up with this crazy sound check. And thank you for turning out, for sure. Appreciate it.